Hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by yours truly, 3CLogic. My name is Guillaume Sainov, and I am the Marketing Director and Business Development Director here at 3CLogic, and it is a pleasure to have everyone here attend today. We are here to talk about WebRTC and its anticipated impact on the contact center space. And to that event, we have a very special guest speaker here with us today, Raj Sharma. Raj is the President and COO here at 3CLogic, and he brings a wealth of information with him. He is a 20-year networking and VoIP communications veteran, as well as a recipient of the 2000 Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Before being the founder or becoming the founder of 3CLogic, he previously co-founded Nextone Communications, which is now Genband, held senior level positions at IBM, Newbridge Systems, and Hughes Network Systems. So obviously he has a lot to contribute to today's topic, and so it really is a pleasure to have him join us here today. And Raj, thanks for having us.
Well, thank you, Guillaume.
So Raj, what I want to do is really get the ball started here and set sort of the baseline in terms of today's topic. Obviously, we're here to talk about WebRTC, which isn't necessarily something that everyone is familiar with. In fact, in a lot of instances, people very well may be using WebRTC today, unbeknownst to them. And obviously, WebRTC is really a browser-based platform, and I know we're going to dive into that in detail throughout the course of this webinar. But I thought for the purposes of our audience, I thought it would be helpful to sort of set the pretense of why WebRTC is important and why we want to talk about sort of the evolution of what we call the browser-based market. And if you look at your screen here, you can see some of the data points here in front of you that really highlight what's taking place, with the transition that's taking place as it relates to consumers, businesses, and how browser-enabled technology, websites, the internet and so forth are really becoming the new driving force behind today's communication. In fact, you have but to look at sort of the evolution in terms of purchases of smartphones, tablets, and PCs, and really it's smartphones and tablets, because you can see how PCs are sort of leveling out. That really highlights the extent of sort of where people are moving their purchasing requirements in regards to communication. They're moving away from hard lines and obviously moving towards smartphones and things that have browser-enabled capacity. In fact, 87% of today's consumers actually prefer to use a PC or a laptop for their browsing requirements, and specifically websites. And in fact, 14% of today's consumers prefer to shop via mobile websites on smartphones, and 9% on tablets. And that number is in fact growing, which is really what we're here to talk about, right? What is the trend, and how is WebRTC presumably having an effect or an impact on that trend, right, Raj?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and kick into gear here, and let's talk about it. Let's first set the pretense of what is WebRTC, Raj?
Yeah, so let's start with the basics and then we'll build up on that. So what is WebRTC? Well, WebRTC stands for Web Real-Time Communications. So WebRTC is browser-based, and because it is browser-based, it is platform-independent. So if you can run a browser on laptop, PC, smartphone, doesn't matter, you can run WebRTC applications. And today, most of the browsers do support it, and the others that are not supporting are migrating to WebRTC as well. Now, the important thing about WebRTC is that the browsers actually support it natively. And what it does, it enables real-time interactive peer-to-peer communications. And that includes voice, it includes video, it includes chat. In addition to that, it also facilitates real-time data collaboration. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it runs natively in the browser, and so you don't have to upgrade anything. When the browser gets updated, WebRTC gets updated as well. And one of the things that WebRTC has done is it has standardized some of the things that are always a pain, in the sense that you have to negotiate some of the codecs, and what WebRTC has done is standardize some of the things so that the peer-to-peer communications is enabled very, very seamlessly.
Okay, so that tells us a little bit about WebRTC and what it is. Raj, can you dive into a little bit about what WebRTC is not?
That's a good question. So it is important to understand what WebRTC is not. It is not a plugin. So we had an era where you had all these plugins into browsers, and it became very messy because you had to keep up to date with the plugins. If the browser changed, you had to again update the plugins. So what WebRTC is not, it's not a plugin, so it comes natively pre-bundled, pre-packaged with the browser. And it's a big plus from a maintenance standpoint. Whether you are an end user or an enterprise, you don't have to keep worrying about whether your plugins are up to date or not as the browsers evolve. It does not require any downloads or installs. So unlike previous plugins which had to be downloaded and installed in your browsers, WebRTC does not require that. Again, that's because it comes pre-packaged, natively integrated as part of the browser. And I think this is the third point, which is it does not require any kind of telecom experience to take advantage of WebRTC. I think that's a key point. And all you really need is web expertise. So if you have somebody who knows how to write JavaScripts, and again, we know that there are thousands of people who know that. That's all you really need to start writing applications that are based on WebRTC. And so, unlike the old days when if you wanted to communicate, voice, video, chat, that didn't matter, you had to know tons of stuff about protocols and all the telecom intricacies about SS7. You don't need to know that. With WebRTC, if you can write API, if you can write code that takes advantage of some APIs, you can write applications.
So if I were to understand you correctly, Raj, what you're saying is WebRTC really sort of lowers the barriers to entry for institutions that maybe weren't able to afford the type of IT resources that yesterday's communication platforms required, and yet today now, with a multi-channel, you can have a multi-channel solution without necessarily needing all the operational overhead to execute, thanks to WebRTC. Is that correct?
Exactly. And again, there are a lot of people who have these web expertise, and as a result, you can have tons of programmers who could be writing applications on WebRTC. They don't even need to know or understand what telecommunications is all about.
Wow, so that's pretty cool. So then let's talk a little bit about why then WebRTC matters. I think we've highlighted a few things, but if you were to sort of highlight the main pain points that WebRTC tends to address, what would they be?
So again, as we just talked about, because you don't need to understand or know telecom, it also means implicitly that you're not dependent upon carriers or other third-party service providers. So in the old days, that's how the applications or the people who develop these applications were dependent upon a third-party carrier or a telecom service provider to really facilitate these communications. With WebRTC, all you really need is the application itself, which we just mentioned is easy to develop, and then use the internet for communications. And again, whether it is voice, video, or chat, you have the medium already there for communications. And that is particularly interesting in the contact center space, because again, you have a very heavy need for multi-channel communications, and you are able to write and develop these applications very, very easily without really depending upon IT resources. So again, we have, with WebRTC, there's a lot of buzz around that, and it is warranted because it is really a low-cost, highly efficient communications, and you can do this from any device that's running a browser. And all you really need to do is to surf to the correct address, and boom, you now have multi-channel communications with your peers, or if it's a multi-party conferencing type of application, then you can obviously set up those as well. So I think this is why there is so much buzz around WebRTC. There is no proprietary plugins. It's very easy to install. It's very seamless. In fact, we touched on this in the beginning of this session, where people use, for example, Google Chrome has been using WebRTC for several years. People don't even know that they're using it. That they're using WebRTC when they use Google Chromecast. Same thing with Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts uses WebRTC, but people don't realize that that's what they're using. So WebRTC kind of goes in seamlessly without people even realizing that they're using it, and that's why this technology is so important and has so much buzz around it.
Wow, okay, so then I guess the next highlight is really to take a look at, okay, well, if you're not convinced by everything Raj has said yet, then let's just take a look at the market. It looks like, Raj, the anticipation, and obviously it's recent. I mean, if you look at the data, it's really the beginning point for WebRTC is 2014, which I believe is tied to the fact that it was really only in late 2014 that the browser, the service providers came to terms on the fact that they would all standardize and service WebRTC. So I guess that's what everyone was waiting for. And now that that's happened, I think we can all agree that at least the estimates and the forecast is that WebRTC is really going to take off. And I guess part of that is tied to the fact that it's riding the coattails with regards to the trend towards smartphones, tablets, and all the above, right? And obviously with the data in front of you that was put together by Disruptive Analysis, it looks like by as early as 2019, there could be 2 billion plus potential WebRTC users, right? So that's quite amazing, right? So I guess that begs the next big question, which is, so who will actually WebRTC impact?
Yeah, so WebRTC is going to have quite a profound impact on a lot of different segments of the market, of the industry, and starting with enterprise businesses. We know that they are going to be impacted in a very positive way with WebRTC. We talked about some of the reasons why. Consumers as well, while they will be impacted, they may not even realize that they are using WebRTC, but they will be able to take advantage of the applications that are available to them. Telecom providers certainly will be impacted as well, and in case of telecom providers, it's going to be a case of some will view it as an opportunity, some will view it as a threat, and we'll go into some of the details of how that will come about. And then finally, it's going to have a big impact on service providers who are offering over-the-top services such as cloud-based contact center services, and they're going to be impacted by WebRTC as well.
Okay, so obviously a wide impact, so everyone needs to take note. Let's dive into it a little bit. So let's start with enterprise businesses. How is WebRTC going to have an impact as it relates to enterprise businesses, and perhaps maybe dive into a little bit of why?
Yeah, so we know that today's consumers are using 3 to 4 different communications channels to interact with businesses that they want services from, and they actually want to seamlessly transition between one channel and the other. So their demands have become more complex. They have also been going up. Now, there have been studies that show that when a consumer gets in touch with a business, 70 or 80% of the time they have already been to the business's website. They've already done their research before they actually call in, and so what you have is a very knowledgeable consumer who wants to talk to a very knowledgeable agent and get services from that agent. So the demands, the quality of the questions are increasing. And so, the enterprise businesses, and again, as we mentioned, they're going to come from different channels. It could be voice, it could be chat, it could be video, and it could be even SMS and text. So the other thing that WebRTC does is not only facilitate some of these things, makes the consumer experience pretty seamless when they transition from one channel to the other, but now what we see is the world of the website that a business has, and the contact centers and the routing of these calls and channels to the appropriate skills sort of merging. So now you have teams that are responsible for an enterprise's website integrating with the contact centers teams or teams that are supporting contact centers. So which is a pretty interesting impact on the enterprises and that is again due to WebRTC and how it's bringing all these things together. In the long term, though, we think that WebRTC is also going to have an impact on the enterprise in the sense that the desk phone that as we know it today might go away. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but over time, WebRTC could easily replace the traditional desk phone, and with people bringing their own devices to the workplace, which includes smartphones. Certainly, the way WebRTC gets installed and deployed on some of the smartphones and the whole bring your own device phenomenon, really over time we can see the desk phone disappearing. And so these are some of the impacts that WebRTC will have on the enterprise.
I think it's really cool just looking, I think those are all great highlights. I think it's really interesting looking just at the chart in front that highlights just how much web site activity takes place before someone actually reaches a business today. And so WebRTC really seems to open the door, right? It's an opportunity. They're already on the website. It is a browser-based opportunity platform, obviously. WebRTC is browser-based, the idea is you could perhaps enhance the talk time or how quickly you get in front of a customer by virtue of sort of merging those two platforms, right? As opposed to you're more proactive as opposed to reactive thanks to WebRTC.
Yeah, imagine I'm doing research on an enterprise or a business that I want to do business with. I'm on the website. I've done all my research, and now I need to talk to somebody because I need something special or I have a question. And without ever having to leave that browser or without having to get up from my chair, if I can just click on a click to call icon or a click to chat icon and get in touch with a knowledgeable agent, you made doing business with me very, very easy.
And it's the idea of customer experience and instant gratification, right? And then on the receiving end for the enterprise, knowing where they came from, why they presumably reached out to you, and being able to address their needs in that moment at the time when they're presumably ready to do something, right? Potentially buy.
Yeah.
Right. Very cool. Okay, well then let's change gears here a little bit. Let's take a look at how it impacts the end user, since obviously that's whom we're talking about.
Right, and I think we touched on some of the ways that this is going to impact enterprises in terms of how they service the end users. Now let's look at that whole thing from an end user perspective. So before WebRTC, you were completely dependent upon either your desk phone, your home phone, your smartphone. To get in touch with a business or another user. And now with WebRTC, what you have at your disposal is really a new communications gateway, and you can use that to establish communication. And by the way, this is multi-channel communications with the people that you want to talk to, with the businesses that you want services from. And this is unprecedented that users would have that much control in terms of how they can use a browser to be their communications gateway to really communicate with other entities, whether it is business or other consumers. And so it really, from a consumer standpoint, it not only enhances their experience but also increases flexibility and touch points in terms of how they communicate with other businesses. And with WebRTC, what's really happening and what it really facilitates is that what were asynchronous communications channels, so for example, the social media channels or text or email, which are some of the asynchronous communications channels, WebRTC can make them synchronous, so that as soon as the agent sees a tweet or a comment on Facebook, they're able to respond to it in real time. Again, what was in the past an asynchronous way of communicating now becomes synchronous. You're able to respond to that really, really quickly. And so from a user standpoint, this is great. This is, it's enhanced customer experience. They get what they need instantly, so there is instant gratification as well.
So for example, I'm on Twitter, I submit a complaint. Instead of saying, well, sorry, Mr. Sharma, please give us a call and customer service will help you, we could potentially send them a widget that's got an embedded link that says, you know what, Mr. Sharma, we want to help you right away. Please click on this link and let's establish a line of communication at the point of the complaint, no delay, and again, better service on the customer's terms through the channels that they've presumably chosen at that point in time.
Exactly, and if you look at that scenario, there is no carrier involved, there is no third party involved. You were able to do this literally browser to browser without depending upon any third party. So
limited infrastructure and yet a huge impact.
Yeah.
Okay, so you bring up providers, right? It's come up on a few occasions throughout the course of this seminar. So let's talk about carriers and telecom providers. You had mentioned that in one case they could view WebRTC as a threat. In another instance, they could actually see it as an opportunity. So let's talk about those two perspectives.
Yeah, so telcos. WebRTC is going to have an interesting impact on the traditional telecom providers. I mean, we already see that the home phones are being replaced by cell phones and smartphones at a very, very rapid clip. In fact, the adoption of cell phones is going to outpace the installed base of landline phones in a very near future. So, and then now you add WebRTC to the mix, and you have very interesting dynamics that are going to impact the telecom service providers. Now, for them, this is certainly a threat in the sense that if they could view this as a way for the over-the-top service providers, just like Skype enabled free voice over IP communications, they could view WebRTC as something that people take advantage of, especially the over-the-top service providers, without being dependent upon the telecom service providers.
It's bypassing them, basically.
It's bypassing them, and that's if that is one way to look at it. On the other hand, the service providers, the telecom service providers, could also view it as an opportunity. So, for example, today we have FaceTime on iPhones, but it only works between iPhones. Now, the telecom service providers could take that concept and use technologies like 4G as well as voice over LTE and combine them with WebRTC, and now they can enable FaceTime-like applications regardless of their captive subscriber base. So you can have somebody on Verizon talk to somebody on AT&T, and instead of having the same FaceTime type of application installed on those, you can have two subscribers on completely different networks being able to communicate using video and voice and chat. So there are some new applications that will evolve or will result out of WebRTC, and I think those are some of the opportunities that telecom service providers will be able to take advantage of.
Okay, so let's tackle, I guess, the last category then. Let's take a look at WebRTC and service providers.
Yeah. So in my view, I think the service providers, especially the ones who are over-the-top service provider, providing services over some other infrastructure that does not belong to them, are probably going to be the biggest beneficiaries of WebRTC. And the reason is that the enterprise communications landscape is changing. We've talked about how some of the inquiries from customers and consumers are becoming more complex, and again, consumers want to use multiple channels to communicate with the businesses that they are doing business with, and a lot of businesses have now migrated to a cloud-based contact centers, but that's not going to be enough. With the advent of WebRTC, they will have to keep up with multiple channels that the consumers are now demanding. And not only that, but remember the transition between one channel to the other in real time as consumers demand not only more complexity in terms of the questions that they ask, but also being able to traverse different channels. And so even the cloud contact center service providers will have to evolve, take advantage of WebRTC to facilitate these multi-channel communications and the transition between these channels in a real-time basis. And at the same time, there are ways that the service providers can leverage to protect the technologies that have already been installed. So, for example, a cloud contact center service provider who has already installed SIP or ACD, the predictive dialer, recording, CRM integrations, all those technologies that have already been deployed in a business, now can they front-end that with WebRTC, keep that install base of technology there, and then use WebRTC to facilitate this multi-channel communication with the consumer. I think that's where the opportunity is for service providers. So they're probably going to be the biggest beneficiaries of this, but again, they will have to keep up with WebRTC, add that as part of their offering, and then with that, they can leverage what they've already deployed.
And it's important, right? I mean, just looking at the table that we have here in front of us, regardless of what the complexity is, it obviously highlights the fact that individuals are now increasingly using more channels to have their needs addressed. So, and yet obviously their standards haven't changed, right? They want the same level of service regardless of what channel they use. And yet in today's world, being able to serve a complex need on social media is obviously made more difficult than if you do it face-to-face over the phone, and yet it seems like WebRTC sort of blurs that problem and makes it actually a little bit more sustainable across channels, and now you can actually service customers uniformly regardless of what their preference might be. So I guess that's what service providers need to sort of aim for, correct?
Yes, exactly, and this is what I think the marriage of WebRTC with the traditional voice over IP SIP technologies will bring to the table.
Gotcha. Okay, so then let's talk about some WebRTC use cases. I mean, we've already talked about a few examples, but let's run through a few just for the benefit of our audience.
Yeah, so enhanced customer experience. We talked about that. How we can now add more flexibility as well as touch points in terms of multi-channels, transitioning from one channel to the other. Clearly, now the user experience is being pushed from the website, from the web server, as opposed to the communications being pulled by the client using traditional telephony. So that's a big difference with WebRTC. And whether it is B2C customer support, so that now the customers can obviously from the website itself use voice chat or video channel to derive support services from a business. And again, the whole point about collaboration with data is that when a consumer clicks a widget, click to chat or click to video chat, now you can push data along with that, and now the consumer can now send the information, as well as the agent can send the information back to the consumer using video facilities, using data facilities, which was not possible with traditional telephony. So you can imagine if I'm having a problem with my washer, and I want to show something that I might have opened up to do troubleshooting, and if I show that to the technician who can help me over the phone, over a WebRTC session, and can actually help me troubleshoot further and fix the washing machine. I mean, these are some of the examples that WebRTC enables, and use cases that WebRTC enables. And you can take this and also apply it for things like widgets or icons on social media sites. So if a consumer was browsing whether it was Facebook or Twitter, perhaps saw something that was interesting, a promotion for earrings or necklace, she can just click on that icon and start talking to an agent, and also the agent can potentially demonstrate other necklaces and earrings during the same WebRTC session and close the sale. So we see a lot of different possibilities with those kinds of interactions, where you start with a surfing or browsing experience, then you start maybe perhaps voice, and then add video to it, and then that way you now have 3 or 4 different channels that are being employed, whether it is customer service, whether it is sales, and then also it just helps to facilitate it. And remember, the consumer jumped from one channel to the other in the same session. On the back end, now you can also give the same capabilities to the agents as well. So even though if they were using a cloud contact center and they were using a SIP infrastructure, now you can give the ability to front end that with WebRTC. So now you have your agents using WebRTC, you have the consumer using WebRTC, and that's what enables this multi-channel communications.
Wow. Okay. So just to sum up here a little bit, so WebRTC obviously rewriting the book a little bit in terms of how voice traffic can travel, bypassing potentially carriers. It can have a huge impact in terms of facilitating immediate customer gratification and customer experience by making interactions seamless across different channels, but obviously available immediately at the point when it matters most, when the customer is actually ready to do something or has an inquiry. And obviously having a huge impact on the enterprises, making them potentially able to provide a more seamless experience in line with obviously what customers demand today. So we've obviously done a great job of saying what everything that WebRTC can do, use cases, and so forth. Just to be a little bit fair and make sure we're not overly biased, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the limitations to WebRTC?
Yeah, so today WebRTC does have some limitations. Obviously, work is being done on those, but clearly in a contact center environment, recording is really, really important. And today there are no direct API calls that you can make to do recordings. And again, this will change, but as a result, the contact center service providers have to still give that capability as part of the traditional SIP infrastructure, but they can front end that with WebRTC and still record the calls. So again, even with some of those limitations, WebRTC still makes a great addition to the traditional contact center. You still need servers, although this is a peer-to-peer communication. You're still going to need servers in order to do some gateway type of functions between SIP, for example, and WebRTC. The native applications, again, it's not something that there are no software development kits that you can drop on iOS or on Android. So it's still a browser-based facility that you need to use in order to enable these applications. And remember, it is a peer-to-peer protocol, and as a result, multi-party conferencing, while completely possible, does require addition of different servers to the mix. So there are some limitations. They are being worked upon, and I still think today it's a very, very usable technology already being deployed in call centers as well as in the consumer space.
Okay, so then I guess really the last question that our audience are probably wondering is, WebRTC moving forward. If someone wanted to implement WebRTC or leverage WebRTC today, what would be some quick highlights in terms of what you would suggest?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about that briefly in terms of how it impacts a contact center that is premise-based, and then I'll talk a little bit about how it should impact a contact center that is cloud-based. So for a premise-based contact center to make the jump from where they are today to WebRTC is best done in a stepwise fashion. So a premise-based contact center should probably start with a pilot that uses a cloud-based contact center, get familiar with some of the cloud technologies that are available today, and then add WebRTC capabilities. So maybe you start with a cloud contact center on a pilot basis for 25 or 50 seats, and then obviously offer voice services, and then use WebRTC to provide multi-channel communications. And that gets you familiar with the reporting that's available with cloud contact centers, as well as some of the integrations that are available, as well as some of the migration paths that you can have from a premise-based system to cloud-based contact centers, and then again reporting for WebRTC communications as well. If you're already using a cloud contact center, go to the provider that you are using, the service provider who is providing you with cloud contact center service, and ask them for WebRTC. So if today you are using just voice and chat, and you want to add other capabilities such as text or SMS, or if you want to integrate with some of the other CRMs, you want to add video capabilities, go to your service provider and ask them for those capabilities. And most of the service providers today should be able to add WebRTC to the existing SIP-based infrastructure that normally comes with a cloud-based contact center. So these are some of the strategies that you can use regardless of whether you're a premise-based contact center or whether you are a cloud-based contact center, that you can leverage WebRTC very, very easily.
Great, great. Well, a lot of good information with regards to WebRTC. Obviously, to some degree, still in its infancy, but taking off. So it's a matter of knowing what's happening before you're late to the party. So, Raj, I really appreciate your time and your willingness to share. For all our viewers, just a reminder with regards to 3CLogic, we are a cloud contact center solution, and we do offer WebRTC. So if you have more questions following today's session with regards to how WebRTC might play a role within your existing infrastructure, by all means, feel free to give us a call. You have our contact information there in front of you, and we would be happy to address address your questions as they come along. In the meantime, just a reminder, we do host monthly webinars. By all means, check our calendar. If you like what you've heard today, we have more great events planned for the foreseeable future. It'd be a pleasure to have you come join us again. Thanks, and have a great day.